Welcome to Diving In, an informative video produced by the Alberta Water Council, a multi-stakeholder partnership with members from governments, industry, and non-government organizations that provide solutions to provincial water management issues. This video is based on the work of our lake management project team, and it presents an overview of general knowledge about lakes in Alberta. So over the course of the video, we'll start by reviewing what defines a lake and its watershed, and take a look at the diversity of lakes in the province, how many there are, and where they are located. We'll then explore in more detail the value of lakes for Albertans, and conclude with an overview of key pressures faced by our lakes and emerging concerns. So to begin, what is a lake, and what distinguishes a lake from other water bodies? While there is no official definition of a lake, it can be described as an inland water body, where the water usually is deep enough to not freeze to the bottom over the winter. However, to manage lakes, we need to take a bit of a broader perspective on this. At a slightly larger scale than the lake is the lake watershed, which includes all the surrounding public and private lands and waters that drain into a lake and impact water quality and quantity. On this map of Wabamun Lake, for example, the black line delineates the lake watershed. So why is the lake watershed important when we talk about managing lakes? Land uses around the lake influence water quality, water quantity, and aquatic ecosystem health. Managing the activities on land around lakes is an essential part of a holistic approach to ensuring our lakes are healthy. However, managing the lake watershed is complex, as it requires greater coordination among the multiple players that are involved in the management of both the lake itself and the land around it. In Alberta, lakes are considered public lands and are managed by governments. The provincial government is responsible for monitoring and managing water quality, water quantity, and aquatic health, while fisheries and navigation are within the jurisdiction of the federal government. Much of the land around lakes, however, is under private or municipal ownership, and land development is managed by municipalities. First Nations and Métis communities have constitutionally protected rights to water, land, and subsistence activities. Finally, stewardship groups and local organizations are also involved in monitoring, education, and stewardship activities around our lakes. So even though lakes can be grouped under a common definition, there is much variety in the types of lakes found in Alberta. Just as landscapes vary greatly across the province, different lakes exhibit a wide range of physical and ecological characteristics. This includes clear, nutrient-poor, cold lakes in the mountains and foothills, warm, shallow lakes in the parkland and prairie regions, which tend to be naturally nutrient-rich, and many of which form some of the larger recreational lakes found in central Alberta. And finally, reservoirs, which are predominant in the south along with more saline lakes, rich in minerals. So understanding this diversity and the characteristics of lakes in different areas of the province is particularly important when it comes to managing our lakes. We'll come back to this idea later on when we look at pressures and concerns around lakes in Alberta, but for now, let's take a look at how many lakes we actually have in the province and where they are located. So the Provincial Fisheries Management Information System lists 3,254 water bodies in the province. It's important to note, however, that these would include both lakes as well as other types of water bodies that we would not consider lakes. Of all those water bodies, there are just over 2,200 named lakes on record. Finally, from a fisheries perspective, we have 810 native fish-bearing lakes in the province and another 300 lakes that are stocked annually. The majority of Alberta lakes are found in the boreal forest and parkland ecoregions, which are located in central and northern Alberta. In contrast, fewer natural lakes and more man-made reservoirs are present in the more arid prairies in the south of the province. So this map shows the approximate number of permanent named lakes and reservoirs across Alberta's 7 land use regions. If we were to look at natural lakes only here, numbers in the south would be much lower. Overall, lakes are estimated to cover approximately 2.5% of Alberta's land area. So all these lakes and reservoirs provide a variety of goods and services for Albertans, including ecological, social, and economic benefits. First, lakes have their own intrinsic value and contribute to many natural functions within the larger ecosystem. They also provide valuable ecological goods and services that benefit humans, such as water storage, flow attenuation and flood retention, water infiltration, groundwater recharge and discharge, aquatic and terrestrial biodiversity, and nutrient cycling. Lakes also provide opportunities for recreational fisheries. With only about 800 fish-bearing lakes, however, Alberta is relatively lake poor in comparison to other provinces. There are 94,000 fish-bearing lakes in Saskatchewan and 250,000 in Ontario. So today, with approximately 300,000 anglers in the province, we have about 300 anglers per lake in Alberta. According to the Survey of Recreational Fishing in Canada, over 12 million fish were caught by anglers in Alberta in 2010, and the total economic value of sport fishing was estimated at just over $488 million. Approximately 40 lakes and reservoirs in Alberta are used as sources for treated drinking water facilities. Examples include Cold Lake and Lesser Slave Lake. In addition, 17 First Nation communities in the province use surface water as their source drinking water, and therefore depend on the supply of clean water from some lakes. Lakes also provide water for agriculture, including irrigation and watering livestock, as well as other industrial uses such as oil and gas and thermal power generation. In Alberta, irrigation from natural lakes is very limited, however, and it occurs mostly through private irrigation. Southern Alberta's reservoirs store the majority of water diverted under license from Alberta's rivers for irrigation purposes. Water withdrawals for industrial purposes are regulated under the Water Act and administered by the Alberta Energy Regulator and Alberta Environment and Parks. Water-based recreation and associated tourism activity is also an important part of Alberta's regional economy. There are now 165 recreational areas and provincial parks with access to a lake in Alberta, and in 2014, over 2 million person visits were made to Alberta lakes to enjoy the beaches and go boating, canoeing, kayaking, fishing, resulting in expenditures of over $1 billion. Lakefront properties have also become particularly sought after over the last decades. Located on 20 lakes across the province, Alberta's 51 summer villages attract many permanent and seasonal residents. In 2015, the total assessed value of residential properties in all summer villages was approximately $3 billion. And finally, lakes provide cultural and spiritual value. Indigenous peoples have traditionally used lakes for many life-supporting and life-affirming purposes, including for travel and as basic sources of food, drinking water, and medicinal plants. In many Indigenous cultures, water is considered to be the basis of all life. To date, lakes meet a wide variety of cultural, spiritual, and aesthetic needs for many Albertans. So over the last decades, various pressures on Alberta lakes have led to growing concerns about our lakes' ability to continue providing these many ecological, economic, and social benefits. It's important to recognize here that the pressures on lakes and their watersheds arise from a combination of natural characteristics, environmental changes, and human influences. As I mentioned earlier on, many Alberta lakes, and particularly many of Alberta's recreational lakes located in central Alberta, are naturally nutrient-rich due to the geology and extensive glacial till in their surrounding watersheds. Environmental changes such as seasonal differences also influence the fate and cycling of nutrients in our lakes. Since the 1800s, however, human settlement, land clearing, and other activities have put increased stress on many lakes. In particular, major human pressures on Alberta lakes include shoreline development, such as increasing property and tourism development at lakes, swimming, boating, fishing, hiking, and other recreational activities, land use activities within the watershed and their impacts on lake health, the need for improved waste management and sewage infrastructure, the introduction of invasive species within the lake and riparian habitats, and climate change and its influence on water quantity and quality, including water temperature. So all these pressures independently add stress to lake ecosystems, but it is particularly important that we gain a better understanding of their cumulative effects in order to develop appropriate management strategies for our lakes. The human and natural pressures exerted on lakes result in noticeable changes to the lakes and the benefits that they provide. As a result, lake users and watershed residents have become particularly concerned about changes in lake level and water quality conditions and trends, changes to the lake fishery, such as fish kills and fish consumption advisories, large algal blooms in nutrient-rich lakes and associated advisories for human, pet, and livestock use, vegetation growth and abundance related to swimming and boating activities, aesthetic concerns such as the accumulation of aquatic vegetation and algal blooms, and the modification and removal of riparian habitat. So as these concerns continue to evolve as a result of the different pressures faced by our lakes, it's important to distinguish between naturally occurring pressures that are a part of the Alberta's natural landscape from those that are likely a result of human influence in order to set realistic management expectations and priorities. Alberta's naturally shallow and nutrient-rich lakes across much of the province will never offer the same experience as deep, clear, cold water lakes. Public perceptions and expectations of a certain lake experience may not always be realistic, given the biophysical characteristics of lakes in Alberta, and it's important to look at trends over time to inform management actions. So while human influences have certainly contributed to today's concerns about our lakes, they can also be part of the solution to address them. Many resources exist to support education, stewardship, and management initiatives that strive to better balance human activities on and around lakes with ecological resilience. Citizen groups are increasingly coming together to better understand what is happening to their lake and what they can do about it. And local governments are getting more and more involved in managing lakes. While the effects may not be visible until several years later, these efforts are key to preserving our lakes and ensuring they are resilient to impacts over time. So this concludes our video on lakes in Alberta. The Alberta Water Council is currently working on developing recommendations to support lake watershed management in the province, and so we invite you to visit our website for the latest updates on this project. Thank you for listening, and feel free to contact us for more information about this video or the work of our lake management project team.